30 years after a masked killer first picked up the phone and asked, "What's your favorite scary movie?" America answered with $97 million in one weekend. Scream 7 arrived in theaters on the 27th of February 2026 and immediately rewrote the record books for the franchise that invented modern horror as we know it. The film earned $64.1 million domestically and $33.1 million overseas in its opening 3 days, pushing its global debut to $97.2 million, a franchise record across every metric and the biggest horror opening in February history. No other film this year has come close. The numbers didn't just beat expectations, they obliterated them. Heading into the weekend, Paramount Pictures was forecasting a $40 million domestic opening, a figure that itself would have been a franchise milestone. The National Research Group had been slightly more optimistic, projecting $45 million. When the final tallies came in Sunday night, both estimates had been left in the dust. The film's Friday haul alone hit $28.8 million, including $7.8 million from Thursday preview screenings, signaling early that audiences weren't waiting around. For a franchise that began as a scrappy, self-aware slasher in December 1996, with just $6.3 million in its opening weekend, the distance traveled is almost incomprehensible. The original Scream, directed by the late Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson, became one of the most unexpected word-of-mouth sensations of its era, eventually grossing over $103 million domestically and reviving a horror genre that had grown stale. Sequels followed rapidly: Scream 2 inches 1997, Scream 3 inches 2000, Scream 4 inches 2011, but none of them could replicate the cultural lightning-in-a-bottle magic of the original. The revival era brought new life to the IP. 2022 Scream opened to $30 million, and Scream VI in March 2023 set what was then the franchise's best opening at $44.4 million, finishing with $108.1 million domestically. Scream 7 has already made those figures look modest. The film's success rests on two pillars: nostalgia and smart business. The most important story surrounding Scream 7 was always the return of Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott, the franchise's original final girl and its emotional core. Campbell sat out Scream VI after a salary dispute with the studio, a decision that cost the sixth entry its most recognizable face. This time, Paramount backed up the Brinks truck, and Campbell came back. And audiences rewarded that decision in the most direct way possible. They showed up in massive numbers. Box office analysts widely cited Campbell's return as a significant factor in the record-breaking turnout, alongside the return of Courtney Cox as journalist Gail Weathers, David Arquette as the lovable Dewey Riley, and Matthew Lillard, one of the original Ghostface killers, who returns as Stu Macher in one of the most anticipated comebacks in the franchise's history. Kevin Williamson, who wrote the original Scream as well as its second and fourth installments, took the director's chair for Scream 7, marking his feature directorial debut. The film follows Sidney as she returns to small-town life with her daughter Tatum, played by breakout star Isabel May. The name Tatum is not a coincidence. It mirrors Rose McGowan's character from the 1996 original, who was murdered in one of the franchise's most iconic scenes. When a new Ghostface killer begins targeting both mother and daughter, Sidney is forced to draw on decades of survival instinct and teach her daughter the rules she learned the hard way. The absence of two stars who defined the revival era loomed over the film's production, but did little to dampen audience enthusiasm. Melissa Barrera, who had headlined both the 2022 film and Scream VI, was fired in late 2023 following social media posts related to the Israel-Hamas conflict. Jenna Ortega, her co-star, had already quietly departed due to scheduling conflicts with her series Wednesday. Director Christopher Landon, who had been announced as the sequel's director, exited the project amid intense backlash following Barrera's firing, though he was not the person who made that decision. Williamson stepped in, and the project pushed forward. Premium formats played an outsized role in driving the opening weekend haul. Scream 7 is the first installment in the franchise's history to be released in IMAX, and combined premium formats including ScreenX and other large-format experiences accounted for 40% of the total gross, with IMAX alone representing 9%. In a year where the pipeline of major studio event films has been relatively light, IMAX cleared room for a horror title it might not have otherwise prioritized. The bet paid off for everyone involved. The film's audience profile was equally encouraging for the studio. The gender split between male and female viewers was notably narrow, meaning the film drew broadly rather than skewing heavily toward one demographic. The audience was also described as notably diverse. Perhaps most critically for the franchise's long-term commercial health, the 1-8 to 2-4 and 2-5 to 3-4 age groups made up the majority of ticket buyers, Gen Z, and younger millennials turning out in force for a franchise that premiered before many of them were born. Critically, however, Scream 7 is the franchise's lowest-rated entry. The film currently sits at 33% on Rotten Tomatoes Tomatometer, a franchise low, though audience sentiment has been more generous, with a 78% RT audience score. It earned a B cinema score, consistent with the grades earned by its predecessors, which is considered a solid result for a horror release. Notably, Scream 7 is also the first entry in the series to be withheld from a wide press screening before release, after footage from screenings in France began leaking online. The decision to limit critical access fueled conversation and likely heightened anticipation rather than suppressing it. The financial math behind Scream 7 is straightforward and stunning. Spyglass Media fully produced the film on a net budget of $45 million, with Paramount co-financing half. When the franchise crossed $97 million globally this weekend, it simultaneously crossed the $1 billion cumulative mark, a milestone that required $89 million from this single entry to achieve. With its opening weekend alone, Scream 7 has pushed Ghostface into the billion-dollar club and will likely turn a profit before the end of its first full week in theaters. For Paramount and its new leadership under David Ellison's Paramount Skydance, the timing could not have been more meaningful. Friday's opening day results came in just as Ellison's company confirmed it had prevailed in its bid to acquire Warner Brothers. Discovery, a deal that would represent the largest leveraged buyout in Hollywood history and would reduce the number of legacy studios from 5 to 4. The acquisition carries significant anxiety across the industry, with massive layoffs expected across film, television, and corporate divisions. Against that backdrop, a $97 million horror opening weekend reads as both a business win and a signal that the new Paramount regime has its footing. Spyglass chief Gary Barber credited the film's historic performance to Williamson's 30-year creative legacy and praised the new Paramount leadership co-chairs Dana Goldberg and Josh Greenstein, along with marketing head Josh Goldstein, for carrying the project across the finish line. The result, in any version of the story, belongs to the audience that showed up. For a franchise that survived franchise fatigue, behind-the-scenes controversy, cast upheaval, critical hostility, and a supposed boycott, Scream 7 has delivered a simple and undeniable verdict. When Sidney Prescott comes home, people come to the theater. 30 years in, Ghostface is still calling, and this time, the whole world picked up. Have you seen Scream 7 yet? And do you think Sidney Prescott's return was worth the wait? Drop your take in the comments below, and let us know whether you caught it in IMAX. If you want more box office breakdowns and entertainment news like this, hit like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. We cover every major opening weekend as it happens.